So hello and welcome to what is the 117th episode of the Adoption and Fostering Podcast, the 29th most listened to parenting podcast in Czechoslovakia this week. With me, Al Coates, and
Scott isn't ready.
29, Scott, 29.
Talk about factoids. Seriously, 29th in Czechoslovakia.
But it's different
Well,
language.
at least we're listened to. Yeah, that's true.
Different language.
It's not even English, is it? Yeah.
Credit where credit's due. I'm taking that one. I'm putting that one on the CV.
I'm going to put that on my LinkedIn. 29th. I'm just writing that in. Writing that down now.
If you could learn a few Czechoslovakian words, that'd be fantastic as well. Scott, I feel that tonight we will be flying by the seat of our pants, but that's fine. I think we will. So, but before we,
told me always. Sometimes that's the best way.
That is the best way. Tell me, how are you, Scott, this weekend? How was the Easter weekend? And then we'll crack on with our episode.
Long and hard and full of chocolate, food and wine and things. And to be honest, it's a day. We're a day beyond that now because we're now Tuesday, aren't we? And everybody's still off. So I'm just waiting until tomorrow till the adult children go back to work so I can actually just sit down and have some peace and quiet.
That
How was yours,
fair.
Al?
Oh, same old, obscene amounts of chocolate. I think we got a new hamster. Tim the hamster came. We got a new hamster.
You think you got a new hamster?
Well, my daughter. It's actually turned her into a functioning human because she's had to take responsibility for something other than herself. So we're encouraging getting as many hamsters as is possible. So this hamster is called Tim, and it's a dwarf hamster, and she's taming it or rustling it or. Do you have to tame hamsters? Anyway, it's keeping her out of mischief.
I wouldn't have a clue.
If she's talking to the hamster, she's not shouting at me.
Well, that's very true. That's
very
good.
A win-win.
Well done, you.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, that's parenting 101, that is, isn't it?
Absolutely. Boom. I'm on fire here. It only took me 20 years to get to this lofty heights of parenting wunderkind.
And it took a hamster. Wow.
Yeah, Tim, the hamster. Timothy, if he's naughty.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, naughty hamster. Anyway, with no further ado, shall we crack on? Because we've got two guests in the wings, haven't we?
We do. Two lovely guests.
Well,
one that's a bit leery, but we've sorted her out. She's on mute at the minute and she's shaking her head at me like she's angry now.
Yeah.
And one proper guest.
Oh, Scott.
She's got the pen in her mouth now. She's biting down on that now.
Yeah, we need to talk about your people skills. HR will have to have a word with you. What we'd love to do is to introduce you to we're going to talk all about fostering today. So from a start point, we've got the wonderful Ema Mortimer, friend of the show, foster carer, all-round good egg. So hello, Emma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's not worked out. She has to unmute herself.
Yeah, I know. It's taken her this long to work out.
Sorry. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Evening,
how are you, Emma?
Hi. I'm all right, thank you.
It
Good.
was fine to learn self-tutor.
Yeah, it's all got... we were laughing and now it's all very serious. Emma, thank you so much for coming back on. We're going to talk about fostering tonight, and we thought that we'd get someone who's actually doing it as opposed to two old farts like us who once were foster carers and are no longer foster carers for very good reason. No accusations. No, there's no reason why we couldn't be foster carers anymore. We weren't struck off or anything. We both resigned, didn't we? Both resigned.
Yes, we did. Just to be clear. Oh my day. Do you want a big shovel tonight, Al? Because you just keep digging these holes for yourself.
There's a voice in my head that says, stop talking. Like I'm not listening. And we've also got the wonderful Sandy Harper with us tonight, who is a researcher from the real Oxford University. Hello, Sandy. Hello, Sandy.
Hi, Sandy. Welcome.
Yeah.
It's so lovely to be here.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you to say. That's very kind. Tonight we're going to be talking about fostering. So it all came about because Sandy got in touch with us and asked her to kind of just retweet a couple of tweets that Sandy had put together about a specific piece of research she was doing. So I'm going to hand over to Sandy and I'll say, Sandy, tell us who you are and what you do, and then we're going to get into it.
Lovely. So We are doing a piece of research at the University of Oxford, and I'm one of those annoying types called a psychologist, I'm sure. I'm getting confused looks. So we're really interested in how people are doing, people's well-being, stresses, all of that sort of stuff. So we know that foster carers are such a unique group of people because they deal with so much stress day in, day out, quite a few unique challenges that mainstream parents or adoptive carers even won't face. So we're really interested in what stresses foster carers experience that make them a unique group, but also what keeps them going and how they persevere, what kind of positive traits or strengths they might have that keeps them persevering with it, I suppose.
Right. I'm glad we've got Emma on then. She can tell us all about that.
Perseverance,
Yeah, been interesting, yeah. So, I mean, I've got a few questions about that, Sandy. So tell us, I mean, how did you get into that? Because that's quite a specific niche. Is there some connection, or was it just a good subject?
So me personally, I started working with children who are in the care system quite a few years ago. So at the moment, I'm training to be a clinical psychologist. So that's a 3-year program where I somehow become a doctor at the end of it. Supposedly some sort of expert. But yeah, so as soon as I started working with children who are in the care system a few years ago, I just sort of fell in love with that line of work. And to me, I'm just so in awe every time I work with any carer who kind of welcomes a child in with open arms that has been through a horrific feat through their life and really helps rebuild them. And I think that's a specific sort of challenge that normal parents don't get. So as I kind of went through my psychology career and I worked in different settings, I just knew that working with children and young people is where my heart and my passion were. And in doing that, the best sort of change you can create for a child or young person is the people around them, the environment around them. So if we support the carers, then we're doing a pretty good job there, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it seems really odd that it's an area of research that seems to be lacking. I mean, given it's not rocket science. I mean, Emma, is it rocket science? Are Emma's working hard? Are they stressed? Are they, what's the day-to-day life of, what's the word on the street from the foster carers? You're like our huggy bear of foster carers tonight. What's the word on the street?
Goodness. I think it very much depends on your support network, both professionally and personally. I think it depends on the child that you're caring for at that moment in time, how many children you're caring for, what their issues are, what their schedule's like, and what type of personality they have. For instance, at the moment, we have one child in placement and she's only 11 months old and she's a joy and, everything's going swimmingly. However, 5 months ago, we had her and a very tricky 4-year-old, and our stress levels were through the roof. However, the little 4-year-old has an amazing social worker. And so that was really helpful in going to her with issues, with frustrations. I felt like she was in my corner, if you like, and that really makes a big difference just day to day on how you care and how you can care for these, especially the trickier young people, I think.
That is quite reflective of the sort of the straw poll we did on Twitter last night. I put out this kind of little Twitter poll asking the question, how has fostering been for you? And we've got quite a few people answered that, and 5% people said it was easier than I thought. The majority, 77.5% said it was harder than I thought, and 17.5% said, oh, it's exactly what I thought. I mean, I'm sorry, Sandy, I've kind of preempted your research there, and I'm not sure you need to bother now, really, because now I've done that straw poll.
All done.
Yeah.
Sorted. Yeah, just give the money back. It'd be fine.
Yeah, you've saved me lots of stress there.
Yeah.
But is Emma's response not kind of so from what Emma's just said there, there's a mixed bag, really, isn't there, in terms of the support that you may receive from a little one's social worker to your supervising social worker, who obviously, if you're a foster carer, you've got a supervising social worker who hopefully you've got a good rapport with, is really supportive, but they may not know the child. So that comes hand in hand with that kind of experience, would it not? Or am I talking rubbish?
No, that makes so much sense, because if we think about stress, we can have general life stresses, we can have stress just through our caring role and pressures we feel, we can have stress coming from the different children that you might take care of. So stress can be caused by so many different things, and I think it's no surprise to anyone that the past year has been stressful anyway. But there was that article, was it an ITV News or something recently, about foster carers being really kind of stretched and stressed because of the pandemic. So I think, Emma, you've made a wonderful point there, and that's kind of the purpose of the research that we're doing. The more we can learn about why foster carers are stressed and what pressures they're experiencing, what types of pressures, then we can help tailor services to that.
No, I think it's also a very personal thing as well. So, for instance, the little girl I'm currently fostering is going to be adopted. So there isn't a day that goes by that I worry about what they're doing now. Are they choosing the right people? Are we going to get on? Are we going to have a rapport? Will we be able to continue to see her? And that goes round in my brain constantly, from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to sleep, from the minute that adoption has been approved in the courts. And so that, for me, is a stress in itself. But it's also a stress that I signed up for. And it's also something that I expect to get. But I do know foster carers who do adoptions that don't find that stressful. They just, baby's going to be adopted, and they roll that on. That's not my personality. And so I think lots of it reflects on your personality and how much you allow or something affects you as far as stress is concerned. I find it stressful. It's important that I do it, and it's not enough to stop me doing it. But yeah, like I say, from the minute I wake up, it's.
See, I find that a really interesting point, Emma, because when we did it that one time, and then he's still here, but he's our child now. Yeah. I find it the most stressful thing in terms of what was going to happen next, where he was going, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not saying that was the reason why we went on to adopt him.
No, sure. No.
There's a number of reasons why we did that. What I'm saying is that there are a number of foster carers who do it in a kind of. I don't want to diss the wording on this. So if I'm using the wrong wording, then forgive me. But when they're doing it at that level where it's not having that impact on them, then that is potentially a nicer way. Nicer? I don't know if nice is a word. A better way of being for them to be able to deal with it, and it takes away from that pressure of actually parenting someone else's child temporarily, if that's whether it's a year, 6 months, 3 years. But I guess the real risk there is how it affects you as a foster carer going through that, because you may know what's coming, you may not know what's coming when they're placed with you, but actually the end result could go either way. And for you as a human being, and your moral compass is set to a certain setting. I'm waffling now, but that could have an impact on you ongoing, like longer term.
Yes. I think what my brain is trying to process. I choose this lifestyle. I choose these stresses. I choose this daily. I choose to look after somebody else's child, and then go, for family visits and involve the family, the birth family, etc., etc. This little girl that I'm fostering has not chosen this life. She's not chosen to be in care. She hasn't chosen now to be adopted. She doesn't choose, that. And so it's a privilege. It's a privilege for me to have these stresses, if you like. But I chose it. I chose this, and I'm acutely aware that children that I foster don't choose their lifestyles, especially whilst they're in care. And so I find that it's my responsibility and my role to absorb as much of that as I can to make her experience as positive as possible. In the same way that I made the little boy that's now gone to a long-term care, I tried my very best to make that as positive as I possibly could, even though actually along the way there were some things that I didn't like and I didn't agree with. What was important to us as foster carers was that he experienced it positively and he had a good transition and he settled well and attached well. It's not about us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you then, Sandy? Yeah, it makes perfect sense. But I'm kind of thinking, how do you then begin to study this? Because already you've sort of articulated. There's so many variables. So Sandy, you're the psychologist researcher from Oxford, no less. So we expect a lot from you. The Oxford, as opposed to somewhere else. What the specific areas you're going to focus on? Because it was interesting. I'll keep my powder dry, but there was one specific area that came out of the Twitter poll. So what are you going to be looking at?
I'm really curious. So we're using a few measures. So one's called the parental stress index. So it's loads of different stresses, and there's 2 types. So there's one for younger children and one for teenagers, because the different stresses you'll see with those ages are different. Then we're also
100%.
Yes, we're looking at general life stress as well. But actually, you mentioned something quite important there, Emma, which is number of placement moves. And I know that it's something like 1 in 10 children have multiple placement moves in a year, which is so much. But actually, that's just not impactful on the child, but it's also impactful on the families that they enter into and then exit. So, but in terms of managing that stress, again, we want to look at what keeps the resilience, what keeps the perseverance. And I can see in you, Emma, just from hearing you speak for a few minutes, that there's the meaning of what you do, that you get that satisfaction and purpose from the work that you do, and that sense of accomplishment. So setting a goal and pursuing it, even if it's just to move the child on safely to the next home, then that's giving you the strength and perseverance to continue.
To do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Al, I'm really curious, what was the main thing that came out?
Well, it was interesting because people were sort of talking about some of the challenges. You know, there was a lot of challenges reflected. The main one was the system and professionals. That was the one that people said.
I should have said that.
Yeah, which is interesting because, and then I asked a few more exploratory questions. See, I know the lingo. I asked a few exploratory questions, and one of them said was that was not what they were expecting. They sort of people come into fostering anticipating that the children, they're going to need a lot of love and additional parenting, that kind of complicated stuff. They just hadn't realised that they'd need to do the same with the social workers.
Oh my goodness.
Gosh. Al, have you considered becoming a psychologist? Because that was a really good exploratory question.
Yeah. I had a oh my goodness, it's off.
So just a little high five.
Did someone score in the football there?
I had a remote visit. You know, good old COVID. I had a remote visit from my social worker today, who let's say I don't always see eye to eye with. She's new. We got her in December. We got her like she's a puppy. And I came off the call. Yeah, I'm trying. I came off the call with steam coming out of my ears, just from some of the exchanges that we'd had. And she doesn't get me, and it drives me insane. And she's a little bit of a tick boxer. And I came off to, and my husband's a social worker, Sandy, so we're a bit of a busman's holiday in this house. Oh. And I came off and imploded on him, rah, 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 rah. And I was so stressed for about 2 hours. I kept coming back in my mind and she was, one of the questions she was asking me was about the frequency of the visits. Am I happy with her visiting every 6 weeks? And I felt like saying, I'd be happy if you visited me every 6 months. You'll know if there's a problem. You'll know if I need to come and get you. You'll know if I need your support. Yes, I understand that you have to do this statutory visits, but you know me well enough to know that I'm experienced enough that if there is an issue, I'll be calling you. Don't worry. But that's where what you're saying, Al, the system drives me as a foster carer insane, absolutely insane.
I think we might have hit on a nerve there.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
but is some of it to do with the building of a relationship with the support that you get? Because it's not just about someone just ringing you up and saying, "Are you like you've had her since December." The same with the child social worker. You have to build that relationship, don't you? I mean, they come with the child. They're almost the kind of legal guardian of that child in some ways. So, but you don't get on with everybody, do you? That's the point.
And it's not that I don't get on with her. We just have different working styles.
No, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, if you meet somebody in the street, you don't get on with them, you wouldn't, but in these circumstances, you might like them, you might not like them. It doesn't matter, but you still have to work with them to get the best out of the situation, don't you?
I think with a supervising social worker as well, it's quite an intimate relationship, if you'll excuse, it's she wants to see my home, she wants to see the child, she wants to, there's quite a lot of crossover as far as my home is my workplace, and that can also have bones of contention as well.
I mean, I would back you up on that, Emma, because I felt when we were foster carers and wanted to check the fridge to make sure there was enough bloody food in it, that really riled me, because I have 2 kids who are adopted. I also have a partner and we have to eat. So why would we? But equally, I understand why they have to do it. And then latterly, sticking the foot in the door when they did the. I always call it the surprise visit. I don't think that's the official word for it. Unannounced, that's the one. When they did the unannounced visit, and she just shoved her face in the door and literally pushed the door open as if like she had a legal right to be there. And I that's what I didn't like about that kind of intrusion. There is a way of doing things.
I think she has a legal responsibility to do one. That's the law.
I'm quite aware of that, but you don't just shove the door in someone's face to like open it, do you? There's a way of doing these things, and that's where I think sometimes there's like this little bit of a kind of a negative kind of connection with some social workers in the way they may think. I can't explain it, but I'm not going to. But I can't explain why she was like that, because she had kind of
it's hard, isn't it?
Let's say that, but. But it's hard when when you
and you don't go to her house.
Placement. Exactly.
You don't go to her house. You don't ever see the inside of her house. Sorry, Alan, we're rambling.
No, it's like you're sort of slipping into a support group. But what I find really interesting is, because I do that function, as part of my role, I've been a supervising social worker, and I kind of occasionally dip my toes back into that.
Nosy man. Pushing your nose into people's doors.
So there's a couple of things there I want to pick up on. One of the, often I work with student social workers, and sometimes I'll say, well, do you do a house check? And my the foster carers know they're coming and everything's fine. And I say, one of the points, or it used to be, I don't think it is at the moment, one of the points used to be check the fridge. And the students would go, oh, that's fine, that is, I can do all that. And they'd go away thinking, oh, this is an easy job. And they would come back and their heads would be mashed by the act of looking in someone's fridge. It's just the most...
Probably because of the amount of gin that was in the fridge, but...
I can't see yogurts for gin.
There's the fruit.
My fridge is just full of sauces. I have everything under the sun.
There's some limes for the gin, but there's nothing else. But
that's it.
The nuances of that are really complicated, and the students would come away going, I felt absolutely like I violated that person's privacy. And I think one of the issues around as a profession is that we're constantly wrong-footed by the foster carer social worker dynamic, because at some points we are partners, we should be partners. And sometimes I'm your social worker and I need to put my arm around your shoulder and go, I'm with you, I've got you. And sometimes I need to come in and go, there's too much, that you need better quality gin in your fridge, or whatever, or I have to come in and say, I have to have a hard word for you, perhaps, about you need to do this. And it's like you said, Emma, it's a really peculiar dynamic that you don't get, and sometimes it can be a long-lasting relationship. And and I've worked with colleagues who've come to it from other fields, and it's taken them a long time to get their heads around: am I their friend, or am I their what? Are we colleagues? Because sometimes literally the foster care will be crying their eyes out, and you got to go and put your arm around them and help them. So I think the system really struggles, and I think it's often seen as a soft touch. I think it's seen as it's just you're just looking after foster carers, and I think that really downplays the significance and the complexity of the role. There you go. So are you looking at that bit then, Sandy?
Yeah.
Come on. Are you looking at that?
Well, I think that's been a really helpful point to raise, because it's not something we've actually put into measure, but I'm reflecting on, at the moment, I'm working in a clinical team. So in Oxfordshire County Council, there's a team called the Attached Team, and they're set up to essentially try and support permanence in placements. So even if it's a foster placement, for it to not break down. And part of what we do isn't just supporting the carers, it's supporting the system around them. So we do a lot of consultations to staff and social workers, and it's a really collaborative process because, as you say, and you've raised such valuable and true live issues there, that for the social workers are also really stressed. And they're also struggling with a lot of the pressures. And actually, Emma, I really liked how you put it, that you have different working styles, but you're almost glued to the hip of this professional that's meant to be there guiding you and supporting you. But if you don't see eye to eye, which I'll be very surprised if you're the only foster carer out there who's finding that.
I'm not.
So I think that's really helpful.
Not if Al's your social worker, clearly, but
Which is not. I'd just like to point out.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. That'd be a little bit of a conflict of interest there, wouldn't it? But yeah.
Well, yeah, just a bit.
Yeah.
Sandy, I answered the questions. I called it a survey. It's not a survey, is it? What's the word? Is it a study?
Yeah, you can call it whatever you'd like.
Okay, well, I did. You sent me the link and I answered it. And I was going through it, and sometimes I was like, what's that got to do with anything? And why are they asking that? And then once you get to the end, it does come together. But I liked the way it does have questions about, how does that affect your relationship with your spouse, and how do you feel when this happens, and how much does the behaviour of the child affect how you feel towards them? And it made me really reflect, because I do find, so if I cite the most recent, the little boy that moved just after Christmas, if I was well slept, fed, not tired, all my levels were up, I could cope with him. If I was not very well or a bit tired, or I'd had a really busy day, and he had also had a really busy day and was also stressed and tired, I just wanted to get him into bed. And then he'd go to bed and I'd be like, I'm so crap. I'm so crap at what I do. But actually filling in those questions helps you to reflect and understand that it does. The behaviours and the stresses and the dynamic of having that young person in your home does affect how you feel about yourself, about how you care for them, about should I be doing this? How much longer do I want to do this for? It will affect who I choose to take in the future. It's very intricate and very detailed, as far as you learn so much from every placement. And I will be having this little boy once a month for respite, so I will be seeing him and I will be able to continue inputting into him. But I couldn't have him full time again. I know that now. But
that's okay.
It takes that child being placed with you. Yeah.
And just like you've mentioned with your supervising social worker, it's the same with children that come into your home, and any relationship. We're talking about attachment here, and relationships and dynamics come into play, and that might bring things up in yourself. But I think you are speaking to something really important, which sometimes can lead to placement breakdown, which is something called blocked care. And it's when, you're all nodding. I feel like you've heard a lot about this, or may have even experienced.
No, explain it, because not everybody who's listening will have know about blocked care.
Share with the group.
Of course.
I'll take notes.
So
we'll do a training session on it next week. People can
it's a really interesting concept.
I love it. Yeah.
People can really kind of relate to it. So it's when, not just for foster carers, any parent, anyone in a caring role, when you're in that kind of prolonged stress, it kind of dampens down your capacity to keep loving and keep feeling empathetic towards that person that you're looking after. And really, it's a way of protecting yourself. If you're constantly giving yourself to the other person and you're not getting anything back, or you're getting things that are really challenging back, and that's triggering things in you perhaps, then obviously you shut down just to self-preserve. And then that means you can't be reflective. You can't put yourself in the child's shoes. You can't mentalize or be mind-minded, we sometimes call it, or just really think about what they're going through and then be proactive in your response as a carer. You become a bit reactive because you're just not thinking as deeply as you might normally.
Big time. And there's also, that's exactly my position with this little boy. Exactly. And then once a long-term carer had been identified, I felt a relief, and my caring was better because I could see an end, a goal to work towards, to move him to this carer. But otherwise we were just sort of in a fog of day to day trying to, help him. And actually with him, the support was brilliant as far as like a CAMS-esque sort of thing. They're called First Steps in my local authority, and they were brilliant. The wraparound care for that was brilliant. But yeah, when he left, both of us were, totally wiped out. Obviously, the pace of life went down. And then we got COVID, and I got COVID really bad. And I think it was partly because I was coming from a place emotionally and physically really depleted. And partly, I was wiped out. But I also, I like, I don't know if it's similar with the blocked caring, but the secondary trauma hour, is that right? Am I using the right word? When a young person has been through something and they are so traumatized, and it's affecting their behaviors and it's affecting their day-to-day life, and you absorb that so much, and it affects you emotionally so much, that also can affect your thinking of just not just fostering, but externally how you look at things and how that makes you feel and what that makes you feel, and that permeates into everything as well. My friendships, my marriage, my relationship with my birth kids. But I think to be a good foster carer, you have to take on these children like a sponge. Otherwise, you're not doing them justice.
That's interesting, because one of the comments that someone had written was that very point, that actually they hadn't quite appreciated the impact of the children's difficulties it had on them, not necessarily the behaviour, but actually the trauma of the children, and how it then sort of the ripples through the family. They're just not anticipated that sort of that very personal and intimate nature of it. And I think I recall, we were foster carers, 2006 we were approved, and we fostered for a couple of years. And I can remember this feeling of it being all consuming, that there was nothing else, and this real disparity between how the parent, how professionals would be kind of offering advice and offering tidbits, and you'd be thinking, but this is our life and we're volunteering here. We're not, you're not paying, we do get an allowance, but it's not my job, and it's not a contract. It's not like I've joined the army where, I don't have any choices anymore. And it just felt like a really peculiar way of existing for those 2 years. I can't imagine doing it, well, clearly we didn't do it much longer because, like Scott was saying, we reached a point where, the needs of our children, we decided that we would sort of move into adoption, which was that's a whole different story for a different time.
Did that pressure feel different then when you went into an adoptive or even parent type role rather than a foster carer, where it is sort of a job that you fulfill, but it's not a job at the same time?
I think it was immeasurably, and that's whether Scott can reflect on this, I just remember that sense of actually I'm the captain of my own ship again.
Yeah.
That if we wanted to go away for a weekend, we could go away for a weekend. And if we, well, I could joke about fridges, but I didn't have to worry that no one was going to come and say, what did you give them for tea on Wednesday? And we were to go, a yogurt. And we wouldn't care less, like normal families, we just, things happen. So I found that, I remember really, there's one visceral moment I remember this, which is probably, it stuck with me all my life, is that I remember there being these really complicated conversations again and again at professionals meetings about, everyone was bothered and everyone had an opinion about how it should be done in different ways. And then there was one night, it was 10 o'clock at night, and I was in the local hospital with a 4-month-old baby. And I was thinking, where the hell's everyone now? I'm the one that's going to spend the night in here, and I've got to be at work at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I'm going to tag team this baby with my wife, and I'm going to sleep on a chair next to a baby's bed. And they're full of bright, I sound quite bitter. Maybe I am. And I'm going to be the one that's going to spend the night here. But I still get no say about how any of this is done. I just have to kind of do as I'm told. I have to just suck it up. So I just remember some of those moments. But fortunately, the hospital released her, so I didn't have to do that. So that was the good news.
But that's the frustration, isn't it? And if you allow that frustration to overwhelm you, which I think sometimes I do, then that's where people burn out, and that's where people are frustrated. And sometimes it's just hearing that from a professional's mouth. So this little boy's social worker, as I mentioned, is brilliant. And she would say things like, it's all right for me, I'm going to clock off at 6 o'clock. You're the one that's got to, go through the night, and then you've got to go through the weekend. And just her vocalizing that, just her saying that.
Yeah.
Just made me feel valued and accepted. And she would do things like, if he'd been particularly tricky, she'd leave her phone on over the weekend, her work phone, and she'd say to me, please, if you need anything, just call me. And I've never done it, but just knowing in the back of my mind that was there, not just Duty, who was, somebody who didn't know him and didn't know what was going on, didn't know us, is so beneficial for my caring of him. So that would have benefited him in the long run, and just for me to feel valued and supported and less stressed, So it goes back to my original point that it's got so much to do with that network of people around the young people that you're looking after. So much hinges on that, and your community. So I have a lot of friends who fostered, I have a lot of friends who've adopted. And so people get my lifestyle. I have had the occasional, what if it's so stressful, or I feel so sad, or you're going to do it again, or what, she's going for adoption again, or how do you do it, how do you cope? But most people just get it. Most of them, and I get picky about who I tell what to, obviously, but most of my friends and my community get it. So that really helps as well. That, you can
That's
just...
a shocker.
Yeah. When this little boy was moving on, one of my things was I felt bad that I couldn't care for him long term, that he had to then move again. And I knew that it wasn't the best placement. And I would say in all the professional meetings, this isn't the best place for him. And then I felt like that was saying where he is now is crap, and of course it's not. But I'm saying I want the best for this child, and this is not it. He needs to be an only child in placement. He needs to be with a couple. He needs to be this. And I knew that because I knew him. But it's so conflicting. So conflicting.
Yeah. So Sandy, I was just kind of writing down a few questions whilst Emma was taking over. Talking there. I don't mean it. And what I was thinking was, is there kind of, because I don't know when you were starting to look into this, doing this research and stuff, has there been a change in your approach to it as a result of COVID, or has it come about as a result of COVID? Was it before? Where do we sit in terms of where we are currently?
It started just as COVID started, really. So we began putting it through ethics last year, which is a task-worthy process because we want to make it safe and secure for the foster carers that take part. So really we knew that it would be kind of occurring during COVID, but that's why we wanted to make sure it was online, and that's why we want to make sure obviously it's an online kind of questionnaire that you answer, but you can pause it and come back to it another day. So that foster carers have a million things on their plates. And also, just on Emma's point as well, we didn't want to just keep it to Oxfordshire. That's why we made sure to put it through ethics to go nationally across the UK, because even though foster carers have so many shared unique experiences, they're also very different. We spoke about whether you're a short or long-term foster care, or if you're going into emergency foster caring, or if you have 1 child or 10 children. It's really important that we have a varied pool so that we understand truly what's going on for foster carers.
Are you recruiting parent and child foster carers as well?
Yes. I think we've actually had a couple of people inquire about that, and we said that's fine. And how many people? At least 102. That seems like a very specific number.
That sounds like a bet.
It's a very specific
100
number.
plus 2.
Yes.
Just in case.
No, we didn't come up with this at the pub.
Because you couldn't, obviously.
Yeah, quite.
The reason that number came about is because we need enough for it to be statistically powered so that we're making robust conclusions. Otherwise, if we did just 10, then we might be making conclusions based on wobbly evidence, and we don't want wobbly evidence.
So really, you're looking for a minimum of 102, which I don't think would be. I mean, it should be achievable to get way more than that, I would imagine. But
no,
hopefully,
it's been open last week, and we've had about 30, so that's really good.
What?
I'm going to share the link on.
I'm disappointed. Yeah. So the link will be shared.
I have a WhatsApp, so on my, and they'll have plenty to say. I know that much. They're very opinionated on my foster care WhatsApp. We're all in the same local authority, so.
Bless you. That's so kind. But
I
think 30 in a week is good, particularly.
I suppose so.
And
I guess it is, but I'm just thinking in terms of the overall impact of what this could report back, and I'm thinking about things like you could even work out the types of people that come forward for fostering, which I'm sure we know already that with a kind of social responsibility would be the ones that may really be interested in going through fostering and adoption and stuff like that. But it might give you a bit more detail and things in terms of things like that. It might also help foster care recruitment because I'm not sure it's so bad. You two might be able to answer this, but about a year ago there was a real lack of foster carers coming forward to be able to care for young people.
I had a hunch you were going to ask me about this, and I looked on the fostering network.
Well, there you go. What can I say? I was prepared. I did my homework.
So, on the fostering network, their statistics are that 65,000 children live with almost 55,000 foster families in the UK. So it's around 80% of the 83,000 children in care are fostered. So the majority are fostered, but there is a huge shortage because the numbers are increasing.
Can I maybe disagree with that?
Yes, please do. It's not my statistic.
Well, that's fine. Then we'll damn lies the lot of them. No, because we had Mark Ozon who'd done the fostering stock take, which is maybe 3 years old now. But what he said there was a bit of a nuance to that. It was that there was like on a number basis, there's enough foster carers. It's just they're the wrong sort of foster carers. That it's getting you want foster carers who'll take 15-year-old kids out, with complicated issues. It's foster carers who will take children with complex needs or children with physical disabilities. It's foster carers who will take sibling groups, parent and child. So it's everyone, I do recruitment and people go, well, I want to take, I want children between this age and that age. And you kind of go, you just can't do that. It's not there's no conveyor belt. What comes through the door comes through the door. So that is interesting, isn't it? Because I think that every blooming roundabout I go past in my local authority is saying, hey, you come and foster, but it's a bit more complicated.
I mean, you say you can't do that, Al. You say you can't specify your ages, but I've learned the hard way that if you don't take where your strengths are and if you don't take what fits with your family, that's where it will break down.
Yeah, I was just going to say that as well.
I have become much stricter. I did back in the day. I would take anyone they offered me, and they loved me. Of course, they did. And I had some really, really tricky teenagers and some mother and babies. And I've now learnt, one, what fits with my family, so my own children that exist, obviously they're my priority, and two, where my strengths lie. And I do have a little bit of guilt with that because that is 5 and under, which is the cute ones and the little kids that, the babies and the newborns. But I justify that in my own brain in that I'm focusing on getting those neurons in their brains correct and repaired and right so that they can then have a better life emotionally and physically. But that's my strength. I did take on a 13-year-old a year ago and it was a car crash. I thought, how hard can it be? I can do this. And it was awful. It was really awful. And really stressful. And I felt so horrible.
Is that not an important part of this as well, though? Because it has to fit within, you're being a parent stroke carer for these children, but it has to fit in with how you live. We were the same. We accepted a child that was within our age range, and we did consider the teenagers and stuff, but they were too close to our own children's age, and we just thought that would be a bit of a conflict. But surely that's a responsible way to approach it.
Yeah.
and learn from what you're doing.
But if you're a placing officer in a local authority on a Friday night, it's at 4:45, and you've got a foster carer who's like, because some local authorities have sort of a salaried foster carers, don't they? And they will get a salary regardless, but they will take the children that they're given with limited. So 5 o'clock on a Friday night, or well, to be honest, I've had referrals 3 o'clock in the morning from prison, literally. Oh, I've said you what? Is that your safe word? I've said.
My alarm.
It's your alarm.
Her time's up. She's putting her invoice in. She's going.
Yeah, she's on. So I've literally had the social workers ring me up in the middle of the night and say, I'm looking for a foster carer for a 14-year-old. I said, oh, where are they now? Oh, they're in jail. They're being released now. All right. Why are they in jail? Oh, they assaulted their foster carer. All right.
Good luck. Yeah.
Good luck. And so, but you're that social worker. It's your job to find somewhere for that kid at 4 o'clock in the morning. This is years ago now. What do you do? And then that all kind of feeds back into Sandy's research, is that the foster carer who takes that child may have felt their choices were limited, and then they feel stressed.
That is a really tough position to be put in, and I think you're absolutely right, Emma. And with all of those points, the match has to be right, because it comes back to attachment and relationships. But the other thing we're measuring is something called parental reflective functioning. Switch the word parental to carer. And that reflective functioning is about being able to understand what's underlying and what drives the behaviours that are happening. And I think when it's kind of your cup of tea, or even your developmental age, even as normal biological parents, there are ages that you kind of get on better with and that come on naturally to you than others, and that's okay. But being able to understand the reasons behind someone else's behaviour really helps with that. And sometimes it's not your cup of tea, so that's much harder to do. And your reflective abilities are lower, your stress will most likely be higher, and then you might end up in blocked care.
And that's what got me through looking after the little boy was like I said, the first steps were ringing me weekly and asking me about stuff and making me reflect. And I did I did understand his trauma, and I did understand that in his 4 short years, he'd had 10 carers. And I did understand why that was the case and how hard it was to care for him and what he needed in order to have that successful care until he was 18. And it's really lovely to have someone just there in your corner to say, oh, that must have been really tricky. And what about trying this? And how about, and of course he's going to feel like that because of X, Y, and Z. And I go, of course. He's not just being naughty, or he's not just trying to, wind me up. And as much as you train and all of these things, sometimes in the heat of the moment where he's screaming and laying on the floor and refusing to get in the car, it all goes out of your brain, and all these parents are watching you and smiling and hi, how are you? Oh my goodness, but it's so hard to remember. But then I have that weekly session that supports me and reinforces me and helps me to understand and reflect. And I may not have dealt with that situation in the moment, well. I may have, shouted too loud or a bit too rough or whatever. But it just helps you to understand that more, and that can only help me in the future. Yeah. But it is stressful. I always say that fostering is the best thing I've ever done, but it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And part of that is the home, your workplace being your home. And then especially now with COVID, so my husband is now at home constantly. So particularly when we had the little boy, if he's kicking off and he's trying to have a Zoom meeting in the next room, and, and it is really, really stressful. Every time I think about, maybe I've had enough now, maybe I should finish, I just think, if I don't do it, who will?
Scott.
And it's not a social.
No, I will not.
I disagree. I don't think, Scott. I know you said that it's a social. It's often people with a social responsibility that foster, but I can tell. One of the reasons. Okay, sure. But unfortunately, my experience is a lot of, especially women that foster, because they think it's like childminding, and they think they can stay at home and they've got children and they're just being mummies, and they don't appreciate all of the things that come with that, including the stresses and the implications on your blood family, on your biological family, which I've experienced varying degrees over the years. And I've been officially fostering for nearly 10 years, but I've been with my local authority for over 20. So 2 of my kids have never known any different, but it is really hard work. And probably the reason I have this grey patch referring to her whole hair. I do get very stressed, but I can't put my finger on why I keep doing it. I don't know.
Addicted.
Psychologist?
Yeah.
Yes, and that's a very good word, Al. Yes, addiction. It is like an addiction because I the beginning of lockdown, I had this little boy adopted. Oh, okay, that's it. My heart's mushed. I've done it now. I can't do this again. Phone rings. Hi, I've got a newborn baby. Yes, you bring her here. Here I am, and the whole thing starts again. And different stages have different stresses, obviously.
Well,
no, and that's exactly why we were wondering about the resilience and strength as well. So, is it the meaning that you get and the purpose? Is it that sense of accomplishment? Is it the relationships that you build, that you build those social connections, not just with the child but the system around you? Because if you stop fostering, you're also giving up a lot of that, and that might be part of your identity. It might be. And also, it's rewarding as well. As tough as it is, it's rewarding. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep doing it. As humans, we don't like pain. We don't want to keep going back into painful situations if it doesn't help. And if it's too much, like you mentioned for you, Scott and Al, it wasn't quite the right fit. That's okay. You've gone and done something else amazing.
Well,
yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'll take that. I'm taking that.
You do take it.
I don't know what it is I've done amazing, but I'll take it.
Well, it's odd because I was sort of thinking about why people do it, and I think there's a myriad of reasons. But often you find I've worked with a lot of people who it's an expression of their core values, and that kind of trumps everything. That even when people maybe are struggling, you just have to kind of open up those core values again, and that's kind of just a little buzz of adrenaline to keep people going. And I've seen that across the last year, where we've seen. I mean, this time last year, literally, I was having conversations with my colleagues saying, "What if one of our carers falls ill? What do we do?" And we were getting calls from placement teams going, "Can we bring a child? Can we? Is it against the law to move children?" This time last year, in some ways, it feels like a dream that we were just absolutely paralysed. But again and again and again, I saw carers step up to the mark and say, "I'll take that child." And we're going, but we don't know if they've got. This was before testing was available, and people people taking risks with their health. This time last year, we didn't know how serious COVID was, and it is serious. It's all complicated. And you go. You people, some of the carers, I just thought, you're amazing. You've gone above and beyond, and then found some more. I'm not sure I understand. Oh, my phone's talking to me.
Oh, sorry. But also as well, you've got the other side of that as well, where you've got people coming out the other side as well. So as an example, Emma just said there, with children moving on to adoption or going back to birth family and accommodating all those kinds of bits and pieces through COVID, and essentially inviting strangers into your home at a time where you don't know. They could have said they've done 2 weeks self-isolation before the matching process begun. How do you know? All that sort of stuff. So you're really trusting as a professional to be able to kind of do that. And I mean, I've always been in awe of foster carers. I think that's why I wanted to be one. So then people would be in awe of me, and then I failed epically, and that was it. So I'd done it. But I do. I think that foster carers do an amazing job, and they're so. Adoptive parents are the ones that, and I'm being genuine now. I think adoptive parents are the ones that are put on a pedestal because they are the final kind of journey for some of these children. Not all of them, because some of them do return back to their birth families, which is amazing, obviously. But adoptive parents are seen as this kind of thing that's put on a pedestal. And I think that actually the work that the foster carers do in between those times, between the birth family and then the adoptive family, we completely underestimate and undervalue that, I think, personally. And I think that's a tragedy, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah, I mean, I think about my children's foster care. This is 20 years ago, plus years. 1:00 in the morning, they took kids in, and they put my kids into the bath for the first time and put them in clothes and warm and loved them for one night.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's a part of my children's story. And that I can't remember who it is now. They're gone, but they loved my kids for a night and they set them on the right path.
Yeah.
And, amazing. We're at an hour, so I am conscious that it's been very Larry tonight. But Sandy, tell us, when is your research going to be? When is it going to be released into the wild, and we're going to find out what conclusions you've come to?
When you're going to come back and talk about those conclusions.
Yes, I'd love to come back on. Yes.
Yeah.
We're aiming for the summer, so in the next couple of months, really, we'll be all done and dusted. But we've got our Twitter page, which will keep updated with the results and the findings and what we're doing with those findings. So it would be really lovely to come back on, because I think podcasts are a really nice platform to chat and kind of unpick things together. But yeah, we'll keep you updated.
Cool. Yeah. What is your Twitter feed?
We will promote it and promote it and promote it.
Yeah, it's important.
Thank you.
What is your Twitter feed, please?
Come on. Is it Carer_research?
You're asking us?
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. How would we know? What are you on about?
It's not Sandy is Fab 22 or something.
No, I think that was my MySpace page when I was 12.
Okay, fantastic.
No, it's at Carer_research. I remembered correctly.
Cool. We'll put that in the blurb as well. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, Scott, do you want to summarise all of that, and maybe you could do an outro? That's a new thing. Yeah.
No, I think I just said what I had to say there about foster carers, and I think that we do.
Bless their hearts.
Genuinely, I think we just undervalue what they do, because there's so many people that say they do it for the money, they do it for this, they do it for the next thing, they do it for all that sort of stuff, and I just think that despite what Emma says, I think that there's something within you that actually makes you want to do this sort of thing, whether it's morally, whether it's socially, whatever it is, and we've talked to so many people over the last 4.5 years, whether they've been refugees or care experienced or whoever, and foster carers are really they are the linchpin between all of this. And there's another conversation way out there about profiteering from fostering and all that sort of stuff, but we won't go there tonight because that's a completely different conversation. But I just think foster carers are the linchpin, and whether it's moving on to adoption or going back to birth family, and that's the thing. I think that some people just assume that foster care is foster care, and there's no opportunity to go back to birth family and stuff like that. We don't hear those stories too often, and we need to hear more of them. And if you imagine dealing with that stress, no. That's not a summary, I know. I'm just blowing smoke up foster carers' backsides, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I'm going to give a shout out, and if people look, it's a pinned tweet at the moment, so you can see the comments from it if you want to go and have a look at the poll. But the names of some of the people who have responded make sense. So we've had lots of comments from Mrs. DX, or otherwise known as Gin Will Make It Better. Feels about right. Wriggles 10.
Say there's a message in there somewhere.
Yeah. Aquila, Tired Grew. There's a whole raft of people who follow us, and they constantly chip in. So I really appreciate that. And
I think they cross over as well, because a lot of them are adopters who've become foster carers, or were foster carers who've become adopters, or who've done both. And that's there is quite a mix out there, isn't there? And yeah. You'll see them on Twitter, on the Twitter feed.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Sandy and Emma. You were both wonderful guests. You should have your own podcast. You do quite well with ours.
That would be lots of fun.
Yes,
you could sort Emma's tech out.
That's so rude.
We love you, Emma. You know we do.
Whatever.
And then I'm coming down to London soon, Emma, so I might come and sit in your garden. And
surely not. My goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
I might come and sit in your garden.
Vaccinations. You have to have your vaccinations.
No, you don't.
You're going in without your vaccinations.
I'm not going in. I'm sitting in a garden, man.
Don't stress me out. Honestly, this last 7 days. If you didn't know, Sandy, I don't live in the UK. I live in Ireland, and our vaccination process is very slow, very slow.
Very
we're
slow.
Still in lockdown. We're still in lockdown for the next couple of weeks. So I